Right, shalom, shalom, shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto YAHAWAH, BaHa YAHAWASHI, RACHAA, QADASH, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways, teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. All right, let's see which is the first video that we're gonna. What's going on there? Oh, okay. Right, so we're gonna have a look at the book of First Peter's, right? Right, because I always thought that the book of First Peter's was written to who the Christians ignorantly call the Gentiles, right? Because they believe that, you know, you got the Gentiles that were actually the seed of other nations that were being taught by Paul and Peter, right? And so, you know, having a look and reading the book of First Peter's and going into it, and then what I found out is that there's a lot of statements that Peter makes in the book of Peter's, right? Which, how do I put this? It sounds like he's talking to people that are from other nations, but at the same time, he identifies them as Israelites, which proves what we've been saying. What is it that we teach? We teach that the Gentiles, the heathens that received the gospel were in actual fact Israelites that were scattered among the Gentiles who were following heathen and Gentilian customs that were being brought back into the fold through faith in Yahawashi and Mashiach. That is what we teach. And the book of First Peter's actually confirms this in a big way. And there's a lot of controversy surrounding the book of Peter's as to who it was written to for this reason. There's a lot of controversy and confusion. Right, so we're gonna just go into that and highlight that, man. Christianity is down super bad. They finished, they through. See what we're saying, there's no controversy, there's no confusion. It makes sense, it actually answers everything. All right, so I want to play a couple clips here. First one is from Bible Study Tools, and it's what is the purpose of the book of Peter, and we're gonna listen to, you know, a little bit of this, just to give you a background about what these goofy Christians are saying.
And I think that the letter of First Peter was written to establish young Christians. It's not written to one church, as some of the other letters in the New Testament were written to one church. It's written to scattered believers. And most of these would have been young believers, new believers. And it seems to me that that's how the first letter of Peter is most profitably used in the life of the church today. It is the single best tool that we have for establishing a new Christian in the faith. I learned this from my own pastor, who all through his years, every time there were new Christians, he gathered them in a class, he took them through this one letter. And his logic was this, you know, rather than teaching a bunch of different themes about how to live the Christian life, teach people one letter that contains all of these themes. And then rather like, you know, the thing about it's better to teach a guy to fish than to give him a bucket of fish. If you teach someone to learn from one letter of the New Testament, then in doing that, you give them the capacity to go on teaching themselves from other letters of the New Testament as well. So throughout my ministry, I've found that to be a great practice, that this one short letter, 5 chapters, it really has everything you need to know about what happened when you became a Christian. It begins with, you've been born again to living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. Now, here's what's happened to you. Now, where do you go on from there? There's one thing.
Right, okay, good. So let's get the next video. All right, share screen. Chrome tab. Listen up now.
persecuted Christians, which will help them see their suffering as a way to bear witness to Jesus. And this has a with a greeting, and then it moves into a poetic song of praise to of Asia Minor, which is that mission in the wider Roman world. We discover the apostles to guide the messianic community in Jerusalem through its earliest years. And that's what happened. Remember the early chapters of the book of Acts. Eventually, Peter was called to carry the good news of Jesus beyond the borders of Israel, however, and this letter was written decades into that mission in the wider Roman world. We discover at the conclusion of this letter that Peter is in Rome, which he calls Babylon, and we learned that while Peter commissioned the letter, it was actually composed by a man named Silvanus, who was a co-worker of Peter. This was a circular letter sent to multiple church communities in the Roman province of Asia Minor.
Right. So this letter of First Peter's was sent to all the various churches of Asia Minor, including Galatia. Yeah.
Modern-day Turkey. And Peter learned that these mostly non-Jewish Christians were persecuted. They were facing hostility.
Right. So in this video, he says that these were mostly non-Jewish, which I hate that term Jewish. Right. What by that, this particular the Bible Project, what they're teaching is that this letter was written to people that were not Israelites. They were not Israelites according to their seed. This is what this video is saying. Let's keep going.
Harassment from their Greek and Roman neighbors. And so Peter wrote to encourage them in the midst of their suffering. And this helps explain the letter's design and its main themes. It opens with a greeting, and then it moves into a poetic song of praise to God, which introduces the key themes that are explored in the main body of the letter, where he first affirms the new family identity of these persecuted Christians, which will help them see their suffering as a way to bear witness to Jesus. And this has a way of focusing their future hopes on the return of Jesus. Let's dive in. You'll just see how all the pieces work.
Listen up now.
Peter opens by greeting these churches as the chosen people of God who are exiled around the world. Now, Peter makes clear throughout the letter that these Christians he's writing to are Gentiles. But here he describes them with phrases from the Old Testament that describe how God chose the people of Israel, the family of Abraham, who was himself an exile and wanderer. This is a key strategy that Peter repeats through the whole letter. He wants these suffering non-Jewish Christians to see that through Jesus, they now belong to the family of Abraham.
Right. So do you see the confusion there? Peter himself has said that these Gentiles are a chosen people and they are exiles. And so these goofy Christians want to continue with their understanding when it's obvious that the true understanding is that these Gentiles were exactly what Peter said they are. They are the chosen people, they are the elect, and they are exiles, Israelite exiles scattered throughout the earth. Yeah?
So they're wandering exiles just like him, misunderstood, they're mistreated, and they're looking for their true home in the promised land.
They're looking for their true home in the promised land. Why? Because they're Israelites. Right? Let's get the next clip. See? Our understanding is clearer. It's just clearer. It's got the clarity. Let's get the next clip.
This is Spoken Gospel. We're dedicated to seeing Jesus in all of Scripture. In each episode, we see what's happening in a biblical text and how it sheds light on Jesus and his gospel. Let's jump in. Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, reaches out to a community of believers spread throughout Asia Minor, what we now call Turkey. It's likely these believers were Gentiles and citizens of the Roman Empire, but Peter calls them God's elect exiles.
Peter calls them God's elect Israelites. They're Israelites that are exiles. That's what Peter calls them. Peter called these Gentiles God's chosen people.
Are God's chosen foreigners who have been scattered and dispersed throughout the Roman Empire. With this word choice, Peter is intentionally placing foreign Gentiles into the story of God's chosen people.
Let's hear that again. Let's hear that again. What is Peter doing? Let's hear it again.
Gentiles into the story of God's chosen.
Pull up.
With this word choice, Peter is intentionally placing foreign Gentiles.
Peter is placing foreign Gentiles. These people were living outside of Israel, right? What is Peter saying about these people? Who are they? What are they really?
Into the story of God's chosen people.
They're God's chosen people.
Jews. Just as God chose Israel, God has elected these Romans. And as the Jews had been scattered by the Babylonian Empire, these believers in Jesus are dispersed through the Romans.
No, they were already scattered, and we're going to get into it. All right? So these goofy Christians, man, they got it all twisted. Let's go to the book of First Peter's. They got it all twisted up. First Peter's 1:1 says this: Peter, an apostle of YAHAWASHI HaMashiach, to the strangers scattered throughout Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Right? Now, these strangers, what does it mean? We went into it in the last lesson. Let's go into it again. He's calling these people strangers. What is a stranger? One who comes from a foreign country into a city or land to reside there by the side of the natives, a stranger, sojourning in a strange place, a foreigner. Right? So these people, whoever they are, where they were living at the time, they were only sojourners. They didn't really belong there. These people that were living in Galatia, Pontus, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia, Peter is describing them in such a way that they're not actually native to the lands that they're living in. What is it that we teach? That these were actually Israelites that were scattered among the nations. What is Peter saying? That they are not really from these nations that they are in. They're sojourners. Peter's saying what we're saying. Peter is confirming who these people are. Let's continue. Strangers, sojourners, scattered. Right? Let's look up the meaning of this word scattered.
Strong's G1290. Diaspora. Diaspora.
A scattering, dispersion of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. Of Israelites dispersed among foreign nations. Of Christians scattered abroad among the Gentiles. That's what it's talking about. These people were Israelites scattered among the Gentiles. Right? Elect according to the foreknowledge of God the Father through sanctification of the Spirit, through this word, sanctify them through thy truth, thy word is truth, unto obedience and the sprinkling of the blood of YAHAWASHI, the forgiveness and the redemption that comes from the blood of YAHAWASHI, grace unto you and peace be multiplied. Yeah? So Peter's letter is written to Israelites, but these Israelites are also in the book of Peter described as also being Gentiles. Right? Because they're living in those lands, but they're really Israelites in terms of their heritage and their culture, and they're being brought back. That's what we teach, and that's what's actually happening. Now, let's get these articles up here. Let's get these articles. Now, this is an article written by these goofy Christians, right? Oh, let me read what it says in the New Life translation. In fact, yeah, let's get that up. Salakia, brother. You're right. I should show how it's translated in these other translations. So in the NLT, it says, this letter is from Peter, an apostle of YAHAWASHI HaMashiach. I am writing to God's chosen people. Who are God's chosen people? The Israelites, who are living as foreigners in provinces of Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. Now, this is going to become a problem for the Christian doctrine as you read the book of Peter's, because it's clear when you read the book of Peter's that he's not talking to Jews that came from Jerusalem. He's talking about a people who were living like heathens. We're going to get into it, man. Yeah? This book of Peter's completely destroys the myth that the Gentiles that were coming into the truth of Galatia and Cappadocia all over Asia Minor were actually Gentiles from the seed of other nations. This cuts that whole thing. And by the way, you know what? Another thing I forgot to do real quick. When we go back to that word, before I move on to that article, when we go to that word scattered in diaspora, when you look at where it's used, if you look at the usage, the 3 times that word diaspora, in fact, that word still is used to this day to represent Israelites scattered around the world. It's called diaspora. It's a very specific word, diaspora. It's only used 3 times in the New Testament, and in all 3 times, it's talking about Israelites. John 7:35. Then said the Jews among themselves, whither will he go that we will not find him? Will he go unto the dispersed, the scattered, the exiled among the Gentiles and teach the Gentiles? Showing you the Jews in Jerusalem knew that you had Israelites that were scattered among the nations, and they were calling them Gentiles. James 1:1. James, a servant of God and of the Lord YAHAWASHI Mashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered, diaspora, abroad, greeting. And then it's also mentioned in the book of First Peter's. So these people, these Gentiles that these letters were written to, were the diaspora. They were of the diaspora. Christianity got a big problem. Inside joke, man. Big problem. Anyway, let's keep it moving. I want to get I wasn't going to use that one. Right. The recipients of First Peter, Jews or Gentiles? I prefer to use the term Israelites or Gentiles. I don't like the overuse of the term Jew. But anyway, Jews or Gentiles. It said, there are many indications. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so brothers can read this a bit better. All right, let's read this. Let's see. The recipients of First Peter's, Jews or Gentiles. There are many indications in First Peter that suggest Peter's readers may have been predominantly Christian Jews, which that's ridiculous. The Christians were Israelites. You can't be a Christian and not be an Israelite. You had to be an Israelite to be a Christian. The word Christians means anointed, meaning you've been sanctified, you've been anointed through Yahweh Hashem Yahushai. That anointing of the Messiah is only for the Israelites. As it is written, I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. So the Jews were first called Christians in Antioch. A real Christian has to be an Israelite, a saint. But anyway, Peter's readers may have been predominantly Christian Jews who had settled in cities in the various provinces of Asia Minor, present-day Turkey. The city of Sardis, other cities in Asia Minor, were home to large so-called Jewish communities. The word translated as scattered in 1 Peter's 1:1, diaspora, is practically a technical term that refers to the dispersion of the Jews in foreign lands, away from their homeland, Israel. Peter uses several Jewish terms in his letter, plus numerous allusions and quotations of Old Testament scriptures. These terms and scriptures would have been readily understood by a Jewish audience. Listen to this now. You see, so what they're trying to tell you here is they're trying to reconcile the fact that Peter is talking to these Gentiles as if they are actually Jews, which that's what they are. But let's keep it moving. Most theologians, however, believe that Peter wrote his letter to Gentile Christians. meaning in their worldview, meaning these people that Peter was writing to were not Israelites. But we know that what it really was that they were Israelites that had grown up in the Gentile customs. Yeah, that's the true understanding that dispels all this confusion. Most theologians, however, believe that Peter wrote his letter to Gentile Christians with a pagan background. If this is the case, perhaps Peter, whose ministry was mainly to the Jews, had simply become accustomed to explaining Christianity with a Hebrew frame of reference. Certainly, Christianity has its roots in so-called Judaism. So what these people are trying to do, they're trying to fight the fact that these Gentiles that Peter was writing these lessons to, Peter is addressing them as if they are Israelites. And the reason Peter's doing that is because they are Israelites. They're Israelites that had been scattered among the Gentiles and had been assimilated into the way of the Gentiles and the culture of the Gentiles, but were now being brought back through the gospel, which is what we teach, and which is what is clear in the book of First Peter's. And it says here, 1 Peter 1:14, where it says that the recipients of the letter had previously lived in ignorance. Now that can't apply to a Jew that was still traveling to Jerusalem and keeping the customs. That can only apply to someone who hadn't been reading the Torah, had no knowledge of the law, on and on and on. Clearly, this is who Peter's talking to, people who were ignorant. 1 Peter 1:18, where it says that they had inherited a futile way of life handed down by their fathers. Again, that could not have applied to the Jews of Jerusalem. That could only apply to an Israelite who had inherited a Gentile way of life. So the Israelites that Peter was speaking to, which were from Galatia and from all these different places, these were Israelites that had inherited a futile way of life, which was the way of the heathen, the Hellenistic way. Oh, whoa. Isn't that exactly what we teach? Going back into Maccabees, we're going to keep going. 1 Peter 2:10, where it says that they were formerly not God's people. And, well, hold on. When were they not God's people? When they were scattered among the nations and they had forsook the covenant. And that's why they were being called Gentiles by the Jews in Jerusalem, not God's people. Oh, man. 1 Peter 4:2-4, which alludes to the former Gentile lifestyles of Peter's audience. So the people who Peter was writing to, who he called Israelites who were scattered and exiled, were formerly living the lifestyles of Gentiles. I wish I had one of them foghorns. I wish I had a foghorn to just blaze it up, real Benjamite style, man. Do you understand what we're reading here? You see, this whole time, these goofy Christians want to make us look crazy for what we're teaching. What we're teaching is what's in the scriptures, and it makes sense. And these guys have to come around and try and butcher everything up and undo it. But ultimately, what are we reading here? That Peter addressed these people as Israelites. He taught them as if they were Israelites, but acknowledged that they had been living in ignorance. They've been following the ways of the Gentiles. That at one point they were not God's people. This is what we're reading here. So the letter of Peter was to the Gentiles, but they at the same time, Peter said that they were Israelites. How does that work? It works if they were Israelites in a Gentile state of mind. Israelites that had been scattered among the nations and were following the ways of the Gentiles and were exiles. In fact, that's one of the words that is translated when you go into 1 Peter's 1:1. They, in many of the translations, they use the term exile. NLT. Does the NLT use exile? No. It's, yeah, the ESV, which is the English Standard Version. Peter, an apostle of YAHAWASHI Mashiach, to those who are elect exiles of the dispersion in Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. That's who the Gentiles were, who Paul were teaching. They were Israelite exiles that were dwelling among the nations. That's who they were, man. That's who they were, man. Peter's saying it right here. He's saying it. Peter said it. They know he said it. Many of the translations even say it in plain English. And these people acting like we're the crazy one. No, you crazy. You goofy. And now you got to do all kind of mental gymnastics to jump around what is blatantly in the scriptures and which is backed up with history, with context. Oh, you down bad. Vocab, you down bad. And you can't challenge us on this. Yeah? Wow. Uh-oh. You finished, man. Christianity is through. All the way through. You've been found wanting, man. Right, so let's jump back over here. This is beautiful stuff. So now they're gonna have to do damage control. I believe that these verses do apply to Jewish Christians, and I will attempt to show this in latter sessions of this study. However, if Peter was in fact written to Gentile Christians, it is interesting that Peter writes to these Christians as if they were Jewish. Do you know why Peter was writing to Gentiles Christians as if they were Jewish? Because they were Israelites. That's why he was talking to them as if they were Jewish, because they were Israelites. They were just Israelites that had been scattered among the nations and had taken upon them, as you admitted in your own article, they had taken upon them the lifestyles of Gentiles. Oops. Oops. Hey, what the brother say? GMS joined onto me. John 7:35 in the NLT, NIV, and CSB are nails in the coffin. Well, brother, listen, we can't sit that on the sideline. We got to bring that out. THAWADAH, let's put these nails in the coffin, man. I'm not one to leave the nail out of the coffin. We got to drive it in. Got to fulfill the work. THAWADAH, I never thought to do that, so you're right. Let's do that real quick. That's why you need brothers, man. You need two heads are better than one. That's what they say, right? This is John 7:35. So we're gonna go to the translations the brother says. So NLT says the Jewish leaders was puzzled by this statement. I hate that term Jewish. I literally hate that term Jewish because it's overused and they use that to confuse the people, because then people think that the Jews or the Jewish represented all Israel, and I really don't like that term, but it is what it is. The Jewish leaders were puzzled by this statement. Where is he planning to go? They asked. Is he thinking of leaving the country and going to the Jews in other lands? Maybe he will even teach the Greeks. Which the word there for Greeks and the Jews is the same thing, right? When you go in the Hellenes, will he go and teach the Hellenes that are dispersed? What was it? Brother said NLT and NIV. The Jews said to one another, where does this man intend to go that we cannot find him? Will he go where our people live scattered among the Greeks and teach the Greeks? Ooh! Why? Because they knew the history. They weren't ignorant to the fact that they were Israelites scattered among the other nations. They just didn't care about them. As far as they were concerned, they were dead. These people had been cut off. The Lord ain't dealing with them. They knew the history. They had the book of Maccabees. That was more recent history than it is now. It's you goofy Christians that's ignorant to the history. They weren't ignorant. The CSB, what's that one? The CSB is the Christian Standard Bible. Then the Jews said to one another, where does he intend to go so we won't find him? He doesn't intend to go to the Jewish people dispersed among the Greeks and teach the Greeks, does he? Ooh! Well, that's what Peter was doing. Peter wrote a letter to the Greeks who were Jewish people dispersed. That's what we're reading in 1 Peter 1. Hey, THAWADAH. That's why you gotta love the brothers, man. Brothers don't come in with no weak sauce, man. They be hitting hard hits. THAWADAH, man. That's beautiful. Let's jump back over here. So, right. Right, so it is interesting that Peter writes to these Christians as though they were Jewish. In Galatians, which Peter was writing to these same Galatians, and Peter called them Israelites, Paul wrote that neither being circumcised or uncircumcised means anything but a new creation, the Israel of God. Now, if Peter was talking to these Israelites that were scattered in Galatia and saying that they kept former Gentile lifestyles, which isn't one lifestyle of the Gentiles not being circumcised. So they were Israelites in Galatia and all over Asia Minor who were of the uncircumcision because they were keeping the doctrines of the heathen and not the doctrines of the Israelites. So they were uncircumcised. So now you understand that they were Israelites who were circumcised and Israelites who were uncircumcised. These Gentiles that Paul was teaching, just like the Gentiles Peter was teaching, were Israelites. Israelites that had, at one time, they were likened unto Gentiles. Right. Right, so let's move on to this article here. Through. Was First Peter written to Jews or Gentiles, and why the answer matters more than you can think? So they're going to do some mental gymnastics now. It says the opening, hold on, let me see if I can. The opening line of Peter identifies it as a letter from Peter, an apostle of YAHAWASHI, to those chosen living as exiles dispersed among Pontus, Galatia, Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. At first blush, the wording suggests that Peter is addressing ethnically Jewish followers of YAHAWASHI, which that's what it is. He calls them the chosen. Israel was God's chosen nation in the Old Testament. No, Israel is God's chosen nation, period. Israel is God's chosen nation, period. It's not in the Old Testament. They're God's chosen people forever. And I will yet choose Israel. There is no, oh, they were the chosen people in the Old Testament, but there's a new, no, it's the same. The Lord has already chosen. Yeah? He refers to them as exiles. The Jewish people had been exiled from their homeland by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. And see, look, we have to remember that Israelites won't only exiled during the Babylonian period. They were also exiled during the Persian period and during the Greek period. Many Israelites throughout those periods were living among the other nations. That's why when you go into the book of First Maccabees, it even tells you how many Israelites forsook the covenant, forsook the way of Israel, and ran and fled among the other nations and was living there. So it weren't just Babylon. It weren't just during the Babylonian exile was a major exile because the whole, pretty much almost the whole of Jerusalem and that got moved out, right? But that doesn't represent the entirety of the exile. There were still Israelites exiled throughout the world, even during the time of the Romans. That's why Peter's addressing them. And these people were being called Gentiles. So you see how they try and play with your mind. No. It wasn't just the Babylonians, okay? And when he says they are dispersed abroad, the Greek term he uses is diasporas, a term used to refer to the scattering of Jewish people, I don't like that, Israelite people, from which we get the phrase diaspora Jews. And yet there are some other verses in First Peter that seem to suggest the letter was intended for Gentiles, meaning non-Jewish Christians, leading to much debate among commentators. Well, there ain't no debate amongst us because we understand that, yes, it was written to Gentiles, but these Gentiles were Israelites that were exiled. It's that simple. There's no need to wrestle with it. It's clear. In 118, Peter writes how his readers have been redeemed from your empty way of life inherited from your fathers. Would Peter really have referred to the Jewish, I hate this word, man, the Jewish faith he grew up with as an empty way of life? And in 4 and 3, he implies that his readers used to practice unrestrained behavior, evil desires, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and lawless idolatry. Hardly the kind of behavior that should be characterized good Torah observing Jews. Why? Because these were Israelites that had basically went off, and their forefathers had, through the book of Maccabees, you read about it, which we're going to get it, they had gone into the way of heathenism for many generations. Yeah? Scholars have long been divided over the question of First Peter's intended audience, but it seems that the majority of classical interpreters took the phrase exiles dispersed abroad at face value, seeing a Jewish audience to be in view. John Calvin, isn't John Calvin who Vocab Malone praises, and that's who he follows? Yeah, Vocab Malone claims that he's basically a Calvinist, right? Spaghetti-o. Let's see what John Calvin had to say. John Calvin is a good representative when he writes in his commentary on First Peter, they who think that all the godly are thus called because they are strangers in the world and are advancing towards the celestial country are much mistaken, and this mistake is evident from the word dispersion, which immediately follows, for this can apply only to Jews. Listen, drop the mic. Yo, Vocab, your own boy that you look up to, your Donny, your elder, your Don, your prophet, your man of the Lord said that the book of Peter's was written to Israelites. Oh, really? What, them man all up in Galatia and Cappadocia and Bithynia? Oops. Yo, Vocab, what's going on? That's your Don. Your Don, your top Don, John Calvin, said that the book of First Peter's only applies to the Israelites, to the Jews. Oh, you finished, man. Now, obviously, that man have had to do some damage control. In modern times, though, the consensus has shifted. Today, most scholars understand First Peter to have been written to Gentile Christians. They do so primarily because verses like 1:18 and 4:3, but also because the region Peter addresses were largely Gentile territory. Oh, wow. Oh. So now they're confused. They're like, well, hold on. Peter's talking to these people and he's addressing them as Israelites, but then he's saying basically that they never kept the customs, so basically they're Gentiles, but he's calling them Israelites at the same time. That's because they are Israelites. They were just following the ways of the Gentiles. Yo, Vocab's down bad, man. That's why, to hell with Vocab, man. We're going to skip Vocab out. We're going to go to John Calvin. Now, what Vocab going to have to say about that? No, you're going to start running damage control as usual. What if Peter was writing to Jews? The evidence and the implication. Peter was Jewish. Ugh, I hate that term. Peter wasn't Jewish. He was an Israelite, okay, from the tribe of Judah. Peter was Jewish, but to whom was he addressing his letters? A mixed congregation of Jews and Gentiles, or a group of Jewish believers? If he was addressing a Jewish audience in his first letter, there are some major implications. We intend to show you that he was, and why understanding this is important for all believers, Jews and Gentiles alike, together in the Messiah. Well, the correct identification of Israel is a key to the true interpretation of the whole Bible. If Israel means God's ancient people, the Bible becomes as clear as truth itself. If Israel means the New Testament church, the teaching of the Bible becomes obscure. W.A. Criswell, right? Because they try and separate the church, the congregation, because the word church shouldn't be in the Bible. The word that should be there is congregation. They try to separate the congregation in the New Testament from the congregation in the Old Testament, which is a fallacy. The same people that the Lord chosen and was dealing with in the Old Testament, it's the same people he's dealing with in the New Testament. That's why the New Testament it tells you that it's for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. It's the same people. And that's why the Gentiles that Paul and Peter were teaching are correctly identified as the diaspora. But these men are trying to play games. These men are trying to play games with the words Jew and Gentile as if they don't know. Okay? Now that's really what I want. Theologians throughout the ages concluded it was written to the Jews. A straightforward reading of the text indicates that the recipients were Jewish Christians. Karen H. Jobs maintains that in contrast to modern interpreters, most ancient exegetes, however you pronounce that, understood the recipients of the letter to be converts from Judaism. Right? No, they weren't converts from Judaism. They weren't. They were Israelites. They were converted Israelites who had been following the ways of the Gentiles. See, they're constantly trying to muddy the waters from what we're actually reading. All right. I'm going to do a whole different lesson on this later. Right. Let's get the history. Was there Peter's talking to Israelites exiled among the Asia Minor, right? And in 18, it says, for as much as you know that you were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers. So how can we explain this? How can we explain that Peter was writing to Israelites exiled among the Gentiles who were following vain traditions they got from their fathers? Well, very simple. Let's go into Bible. Let's have a look at a Bible timeline. So on the Bible timeline, right, they're putting the time of the Maccabees to around 66, 63 BC. Second Maccabees. All right. 66 BC. Let's look at the time of the Romans. We know the time of YAHAWASHI was like, 180 in them ones, right? So there'd been a generation or two in the meantime. Now let's go. What tradition did these people receive? This is First Maccabees, the first chapter. Let's see what it says. First Maccabees 1 and 10. And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus Epiphanes. Let's look him up, Antiochus Epiphanes. And that's why most Christians don't understand. The brother Ashar put 1 Corinthians 12 and 2. You know that ye were Gentiles carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. Exactly, because the Corinthians, who were believers, were exiled Israelites who were carried away into the way, as we're going to read, into the way of Gentilism. They were Hellenized. So Antiochus Epiphanes, there we go. That was around 164 BC. So 164 BC, that's a long time. So that's 164 years before YAHAWASHI. That's a lot of generations there. It's about what, 4 generations, right? So at that time it says, in those days, and there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surname Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been a hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. In those days, went out of Israel, right, not Jewish, out of Israel, wicked men, but these were mainly Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, who were in Judea, who persuaded many, saying, let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward therein, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinances of the heathen. So they started following heathen customs. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised. made themselves uncircumcised. So they became uncircumcised. These are Israelites. And forsook the holy covenant and joined themselves to the heathen and were sold to do mischief. So basically, they became heathens. They start acting like heathens. Now, during the time of the Maccabees, right, you know, they basically managed to get these people out of the land. But where did they go? It says here, so they joined their forces and smote sinful men in their anger and wicked men in their wrath. But the rest fled to the heathen for succor. So many Israelites that were following the ways of the heathens, they fled among the heathen. Now, if they fled out of Judea, where would they have fled to? Well, what was in the surrounding areas? Asia Minor. Yeah? Asia Minor up into Europe. So you had Israelites that were following the ways of the heathen, that were uncircumcised in the heart, and their children were also becoming uncircumcised, because that was one of the commandments of Antiochus. And they fled among the heathen, and they became Hellenized, and they became assimilated. So imagine 3-4 generations down the line, those children would they have inherited Israelite doctrine and tradition? No, they inherited Gentile tradition, which is why it says in verse 18, of these Israelites scattered abroad, these strangers, for as much as ye know that ye were not redeemed with corruptible things as silver and gold from your vain conversation received by tradition from your fathers, because these Israelites were scattered among the Gentiles and they were following the ways of the Gentiles. That's what they had received from their fathers, because their fathers were exiles. They were out there in the world. And that's why they were being called Gentiles and heathens, but they were actually, according to their lineage and seed, Israelites, as Peter confirmed in the first verse. And Peter is basically bringing them back into the fold. And that's why when you go into the second chapter, Peter says to them, ye are a royal seed. He confirms, look, you're Israelites, man. Yeah. First Peter's 2 and 9, it says, but ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, Israelites, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praise of him that have called you out of darkness into marvelous light. Now, again, that's all prophecy, because when you go into the cross-reference, right, it's going to tell you about, wow, that is crazy. Look at all these cross-references, all regarding Israel. Mad thing. But I want to get specifically. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Look at this. Now we've confirmed that the book of First Peter is talking to Israelites here. Look at all the precepts that they got cross references. Look at this. Revelations 5 and 10. And has made us unto our God kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. Man, this is Revelations 1 and 6. It's all Israelites, man. It's crazy. Exodus 19 and 6. All the precepts go back to Israel. But I wanted to go down. Man, crazy. That's what I wanted. Isaiah 60. I thought it did. Isaiah 9 and 2. The people that walked in darkness have seen a great light. They that dwell in the land of the shadow of death, upon them have shined the light. Israelites. Isaiah 60 and 1. That's what I wanted. Because doesn't it mention about a light unto the Gentiles? Isaiah 60 and 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people. But the Lord shall arise upon thee. Who's the thee? Zion, Israel, and his glory shall be seen upon thee. And the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and kings to the brightness of thy rising. That's what Peter's talking about. Peter's talking to these Israelites that are exiled, that had been following the ways of the Gentiles. And he's saying, look, man, you're coming back out of darkness into that light. It's all about Israel, baby. Yeah? Which in time past were not a people, Hosea the 1st chapter, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy. That goes into Hosea the 1st chapter. Oh, damn. For real? Salakia, man. Damn, I didn't know. Hey, someone should have said that, man. I might have to post all these articles so brothers can go and read over them. Let me do that now, actually. Let's get that. Hey, someone should have told me that you couldn't see the screen, man. Damn. These are the articles that I was going through, so you can go and read into them. Is that the... Yeah, and one more. I'll get the other one. Right, so lucky. I didn't know that the stupid thing wasn't sharing the screen. It must have come off. Right, where was I? Right. Right, so there we go. So, and the Gentiles shall come to thy light, and the kings of brightness, kings to the brightness of thy rising. Okay, so that's why Peter's saying what he's saying here about coming out of the darkness and all this. So all of this book of Peter's is talking about the Israelites. It's talking about Israelites, two Israelites, but these Israelites were Israelites that were scattered among the nations. And these are the Gentiles that are mentioned in the New Testament that were coming back into the fold. These are the heathen that were being justified. They're Israelites that were scattered among the nations, man. Let me see if I can get the other. Yeah, this article as well. Yeah, these are the articles that I was basically reading from. So put them in the comment board there. Right. See, in the live chat, you can go back and check them articles. Right. So basically, man, this whole thing exposes exactly what we teach is what's in the scriptures. Yeah, Peter in the book of Peter's was speaking to Gentiles, and he identifies these Gentiles as Israelites that are scattered. But they try and make us look like we're crazy, but we're not crazy. Okay? Simple as that. I don't know where this is the point I wanted to bring out. I don't know what else we can say. Israel was scattered among the nations, and now they're being brought back through this word, through this doctrine. And it's confirmed. Make sure that I posted all the articles. That one. I think there was another one as well. This one as well. Right. Okay, good. So those three articles, those are the articles I was pretty much reading from. So you can go and read over those articles. And like everything they say in the articles is not correct, but the parts that I read from, it tells you, it tells you what you need to know. That's why they're having this debate about, oh, was he writing to Israelites or was he writing to Gentiles? Because when you put it all together, on one hand, he's calling them Israelites, but on the other hand, he's talking to them like they were Gentiles. When you put it together, you understand, well, that's because they were Israelites, but they were following the ways of the Gentiles. Okay, good. I hope everyone was getting what I was saying, and obviously it's easier when you can read it. I didn't know that it wasn't sharing, but Lord willing, it was edifying anyway. Those articles are there. You can go back and, as you're watching the video, you can go back and actually pull up the articles and see exactly what I'm saying and pull up the scriptures, which will help anyway. But did that make sense, Arkham? Everyone understand the importance of what we've read today? Hopefully they understand. This is groundbreaking stuff. Groundbreaking in the ways is something that we didn't already understand, but it's like it's here for you, and really even they know it, and that's why they're trying to run damage control. And Vocab, he can't say nothing because his own elder and leader John Calvin admitted that the book of Peter's was written to Israelites and only Israelites. All right, what else we see if we could pop anything else out of here. I mean, this stuff is gold. So now when you go and you read the book of Peter's, and with that understanding, which you should have already, then you can see, Rob, what we're teaching is exactly true. Look, newborn babes. So who's being born again? Israelites. Israelites are being born again, desiring the sincere milk. It's all Israel. It always has been, man. So when you read the book of Galatians now, you understand who the foolish Galatians were? They were Israelites. Right, so yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll put the articles, and what I'll have to do is I'll put the articles in the comment board as well in a pinned message, so that anyone can follow along with the articles that I'm reading, and see the information. But yeah, Lord will, that was edifying, man. Hopefully it come out the way it needed to come out, man, in the spirit. So with that, I'm gonna say, Kal Halal Yahawah Shem YAHAWASHI, man, for giving us this knowledge and life and everything, man. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways, teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. Shalom.